Okay, your GMO greetings. We're just giving some people a few minutes, a couple of minutes more to log in. If you have any issues with the sound or the images, just let me know so we can correct that. We're just going to give it a couple more minutes and we're going to get it started. Okay. Okay, so we're going to get started. So, the GMO greetings, say everyone for tuning in. This is actually the second live in a series. We did the first one last week. It was called Who is the Great Mother? And we went into detail about Amenet, the Great Mother, feminine aspect of the Supreme Being. So, you have the Great Father, who is Amen. You have the Great Mother, who is Amenet. So we went into detail about cosmology and trustery and culture and so forth, and showing her in different, expressions of our ancestral religious practices, not just in ancient Khanit and Kemet, Egypt and Nubia, but in different parts of the continent of Afuraitkaitnit. Okay, hits up, everybody who's joining in. I see your messages. Hits up, your Chiamo. And so, for those who are unaware, I am Odwirafo, Kwesi Radnehembata, Akan Odwirafo of Akwamuman and Maruka TV Mu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. I've published to date 31 books on various aspects of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion, culture, nation building, cosmology, and so forth. We've also produced an award-winning documentary, Marukafo Adebisa, African American Ancestral Divination, and a number of different things that we're putting together. We're going to get into some more of that a little bit later. So, yes, so, and we're going to we'll put some links in the chat room saw a question in the chat room. We'll put some links. We're going to go over a couple of our books, and some more, information, just, documented information. We're going to go into some detailed info. So let's just pull this. Okay. So we say, who is the female creator? And this image that you see on the flyer, that is the image of RAIT. So of course you have, and people are familiar with Ra, the creator of the universe, but RAIT is the creatress of the universe. All Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, practicing traditional ancestral religious practices, who engage in real ancestral religious practice. We have different names in our different cultures for Ra'et as well as Ra. We invoke the creator and creatress, and we recognize their position in creation, their relationship to us as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, and of course, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people only. They have different roles, in creation, of course, but they are also subordinate to Amen and Amenet. So the creator and creatress are subordinate to the great father and great mother supreme being. So let's get into some cosmology to prove that. So first we're going to go to one of our books. Okay. So now this is one of our books called, we wrote a number of years ago, called Inyokumpon, Inyonkunton, Ra and Ra'et. Now, let me make sure you can. Okay, so the reason why we wrote this particular text is because in general, we wanted to show that the same divinities, Ra and Ra'et, exist in the Akan language and culture. Since we are Akan, we're an Akan organization and so forth, but we show in our texts and, writings and publications and courses and so forth, that Akan people, just like various other people on the continent, originated in ancient Khanat, which is ancient Nubia, migrated from ancient Khanat west over 2,000 years ago, reestablished the Khanat Empire or the Nubian Empire in the western part of the continent of Afuraitkait, Africa, and re-established the culture, and it became the Empire of Akara or Akana or Ghana and so forth. Over 1,000 years later, some of our people migrated from those regions where today is Mali and so forth, migrated further south towards the forest belt to the regions of contemporary Ghana and Ivory Coast before they had those names. We reestablished the Akana Empire. And then hundreds of years after that, some of our people were taken from that region and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And so we ended up in North America, as well as Central America, South America, the Caribbean, and so forth. But those Akan people who ended up in North America, we continued to practice Akan ancestral religion. And that ancestral religion goes under the Akan title Undu, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. And Undu also means to feel a presentiment or foreboding, to see what is unfolding in the spirit realm before it happens physically, so you can make proper adjustments. Has to do with divination. So these terms in Akan, this term in Akan that has these three different meanings: Undu, medicine from roots, trees, and plant life; and Undu, to become heavy with the spirit, spirit possession, spirit communication; Undu, to feel a presentiment or foreboding. That came to be pronounced Undu or Hoodoo. Hoodoo. So the Hoodoo religion in North America is the religion of the Akan people in North America. So one of the reasons we show that continuity of culture is to show that we've been practicing the same religions since ancient Kanit and Kemet into West Afuraitkaitnit, the so-called medieval empires of ancient Ghana, and later Mali and Songhai and so forth. But by the time Mali and Songhai come about, we had already left the ancient empire of Ghana, went to the forest belt, and then some of us, as we said, were forced into this region. But the same ancient ancestral religious practices, born of our blood circles, preserved in our spirit genetic blood circles, intergenerationally, transcarnationally through successive incarnations to this moment. So that's one of the reasons we published this particular book, to show the continuity of culture, but it also gives the cosmology of Ra and Ra'et. So let's look at that. So one of the first things we deal with, so we can lay this foundation, is you see this particular image here. This is from the, oh, hold on a second. All right. This is from the temple of Ramesu II, misnomered Ramses II, but Ramesu II in Kanat, in Nubia, in what is today called Abu Simbel. And when we visit Kemet, we go to this particular temple and so forth. It's one of the many sites that we visit. And we will be going to Kemet. Once again, we have a trip next month, but for those who would like to join us in September, as well as our regular annual trip in next spring, the next spring is June 2024. We have spaces open for that, but we also have our September autumn tour coming up. We have some spaces open for that as well. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but we will be visiting this temple. But this is in the temple of Ramesu II, Per A, so-called Pharaoh Ramesu II in Abu Simbel. And what you see here, you see the king sitting here, Ramesu II sitting here. But then to his left, you have Ra. To his right, you have Amen. And then you see to his far right, the deity whose head was damaged is Ptah. So you have Amen, you have Ra, and you have Ptah. Now, some people will try to say that Amen and Ra and Ptah are just all different aspects of the one monotheistic God, which is pure stupidity. You have people trying to be apologists for ancestral religion. They've been enslaved mentally by our enemies, making our people believe that monotheism is superior, which in actuality is an inferior mindset. Whites and Australians cannot communicate with any deity. male or female. So therefore, they tried to produce a fictional cartoon character, white deity like Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, fictional cartoon characters like Muhammad and Buddha and Brahma and Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, David, Moses, Aaron, all these fictional cartoon characters who never existed, and then tried to make us worship these fictional characters or follow these characters. And they tried to put forth the false idea that there's only one deity, made that fictional cartoon character deity white, and made themselves the representatives of that divinity. So you had to, submit to them to hear from this fake deity. But in reality, polytheism is reality. It's always been. There are many divinities, male and female, but there's a hierarchy. Amen is the great god, as we mentioned in the previous broadcast. Amenet is the great goddess, and then they give birth to various children. So here you have Amen, Ra, and Ptah, and then you have the king sitting in between. So we have to show that, just to show clear evidence that there are many different divinities. And then we show that Amen, Ra, Ptah, and Atem in ancient Khanid and Kemet are Amen is, as we mentioned in the previous broadcast, Nyame or Nyame in the Akan language. Ra is the divinity Nyonkumpon. Ptah is the deity Obuadie in Akan. And Atem is Odumankuma in Akan. So we're just showing this culture. Now we get into some of the balance. This is in the temple of Apet Reset, so-called Luxor. Another one of the major temple complex is Apet Asetiu, which is so-called Karnak, the largest religious complex on earth, larger than the Vatican and anywhere else. Within that is the region of Apet Reset, the southern Apet, which is misnomer Luxor today, which we will be visiting when we go to Kemet. And this is an image of Amen, the great God, and Amenet, the great goddess, the great father and great mother. And Akan is Nyame, the great father, Ame, which is Ame, Nyame, and Amenet or Amenat is Nyamewa in Akan. So, but we show them because we have to deal with this cosmology. Now, we just said that Ra and Ra'et are subordinate to Amen and Amenet. First, we want to show in the Medutu, in the hieroglyphs, the Medut or glyph of the open mouth, which is this glyph, is the R sound. The forearm with the open palm, which is this symbol here, is the Ah sound. And then you have the determinative symbol of the serpent encircling the solar disk. The circle with the dot in the middle represents the solar disk in the Medutu and the hieroglyphs. So you have the serpent encircling the solar disk. That is a symbol of Ra and so forth. So, and then you have the seated figure that's shrouded, showing that this word Ra represents a deity, not just a person. So that's one spelling, this group of glyphs. Another spelling of the name Ra is simply the circle with the dot in the middle, the solar disk. Excuse me, because Ra and Ra utilize the sun, the Aten, Atenit. The term for sun in ancient Kemet is Aten on the masculine side, Atenit on the feminine side. So if you look up in the sky, you look at the solar disk, you say that is the Aten and Atenit. That is the male and female force that we call the sun. Aten, Atenit. Ra and Ra'et utilize the sun, the Aten, Atenit, to transmit their divine living energy, just like they use other stars to transmit that divine living energy. So Ra and Ra'et are not the sun god and sun goddess. They are the creator and creatress who created the sun and the various other stars and planets and all of the things, and utilized the solar disk to transmit their divine living energy. So that's why the solar disk can be used for Ra and Ra'et. So the solar disk, the circle with the dot in the middle itself alone, with the little mark here, is another spelling of Ra. Sometimes they just use that symbol for Ra. And then sometimes they just use the Um, Solar disk, circle with the dot in the middle with the serpent surmounting the solar disk, and we'll show why that's the case. That's another spelling. Now you have RAIT. Few different spellings of RAIT. So you have the circle, the open mouth, your mouth symbol, the sound, the forearm with the open palm. So that's R and A, Ra. Then the little loaf of bread, the half circle here is a loaf of bread. That's the T sound. So that's Rat. She's also called Rat as well as Ra'et. And then you have the little egg that shows that this symbol, this name, Ra'et, represents the feminine. It's not masculine, it's feminine. When you have Ra and Ra'et, the T or the loaf of bread, that T concretizes a noun. It brings things into being and concretizes it. So Ra is the masculine, Ra'et, the feminine. Amen is the masculine, Amenet is the feminine. You have Asar, you have Aset, you have Ka, you have Ka'et. The T or the Et sound is the feminizing principle. And that carried over into European languages. They copied that from our people. So this is why you have in English Sean and Shawnette, or George and Georgette, or John and Johnette, because the Et is the feminine, is the quote unquote diminutive and so forth. That's taken from thousands of years ago in our language. So then you have the seated, shrouded female figure that shows that this name, Ra'et, is not the name of a woman, it's the name of a goddess. If she wasn't sitting here as a determinative symbol, it would just be a feminine name, typically. Except in the earlier texts, sometimes they didn't use the determinative of the male or female. They would just put the name because people knew what it was. Another spelling is the solar disk, just like Ra, but then you have the T sound to show it's feminine, Ra-et. And then another spelling, another variation on the spelling, the solar disk surmounted by the cobra serpent with the symbol for the T, Ra-et. So 3 different spellings of Ra, 3 different spellings of Ra-et. Hold on 1 second. And just to go up, so you see, of course, as you can see here, the solar disk on the head of Ra with the surmounted by the serpent. And then you have Ra'et. She has the golden solar disk between the 2 cow's horns and so forth on her head. So now we're going to touch on some information we touched on a little bit in the last Who is the Great Mother piece. When we're talking about creation itself and the coming into being of the universe, we talk about the distinction between Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, the divine living energy that animates all created entities in creation. Similar to, the solar energy, 93 million miles away from Earth is the sun and so forth, travels across the black substance of space, penetrates the atmosphere, and the solar energy fills up the entire atmosphere and so forth. So that divine living energy that permeates all of creation is the energy of Ra and Ra'et that animates all created entities, naturally created entities in creation, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black human life, the spirits of our ancestors and ancestors, the deities and so forth. That divine living energy is Ra and Ra'et. But there's a distinction between Ra and Ra'et as creator and creatress, and Amen and Amenet, the supreme being. So if you go from nothing to something in the beginning of creation, nothing to something, cosmologically in ancient Kemet, we explain it, and it's shown in the ancient text. As you can see, these primordial 8 divinities. You have Amen and Amenet, the great primordial, stable, permanent, and abiding hidden being. So the root term men means stable, permanent, and abiding, but men also means hidden or concealed, invisible, imperceptible, and so forth. So Amen and Amenet are the great being. They're the great hidden, invisible, stable, permanent, and abiding being. So the first act of creation is to create this great substance of space, the two divinities, Ka and Kaet, who's also called Keku and Kekuet. But the black substance of space is a primordial substance. It has the capacity to take any form, any shape, any fashion, form, and so forth. But first, you have to have a primordial substance that has the capacity to take any potential shape. So they give birth to Ka and Kaya, which manifests as a male and female force, the black substance of space. Today, astrophysicists call the black substance of space dark energy and dark matter that makes up 99+% of the universe. We call that Ka and Kaya, the male and female force, the black substance of space. Then they gave birth to, within the black substance, the female and male divinity, Hehu and Hehut, which is expansion and contraction. The term He or Hehu in ancient Kemet, and let's just show that real quick. These two names here, He and Hehu and Hehut in ancient Kemet, means He means fire. He also means to breathe, expansion and contraction, vitality. And He also means eternal and everlasting. So when you're breathing, that's expansion and contraction. Hehu, Hehu, Hehu. But then you also have fire. When you generate a great deal of heat through that expansive, fiery breathing and so forth, you can generate energy. But Hehu also means eternal and everlasting, non-stop. Meaning from the time you're born to the time you transition, you are Hehu, breathing and so forth. But that lends its name to the name of these two divinities. So first, the black substance of space was created. Then Amen and Amenet gave birth to the male and female forces, Hehu and Hehut, and expended their energy within the black substance, and expansion and contraction began to happen within the black substance, Hehu, 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 and it began to cause the black substance to vibrate. Adding heat, He, breath, He, eternal everlastingness, He, within the black substance, and now vibration begins to take place. Then eventually, those vibrations give birth to wave energy within the black substance, and that wave energy are the deities Nun and Nonet. And let's scroll down and see them. And you'll see that they're named as spelled with the wavy water line, energetic line, and so forth, and the three little vessels, the containers, Nun, and Nonet. Now, and that's the wave energy that manifests within the black substance. So the black substance starts waving, and there's energy moving back and forth within the black substance. And eventually the wave energy begins to wave so rapidly that it generates spheres that rise up and explode within the black substance. Now, when you give the example of water being boiled on the stove and so forth, you have the exact same principle. So water is a formless substance. It has the potential to take any form, any shape imaginable, but at first it's just in a stable form still. So pouring some water in a pot is akin to Amen and Amenet filling up space, the black substance of space. It's a great black substance. It's a great substance that can take any form, infinite potential. Then when you put heat to water, this water begins to boil, it begins to vibrate. When you put Hehu, within the black substance, it begins to vibrate. Eventually, the vibrations give birth to waves of energy moving throughout the pot, the water pot. Now you have waves going back and forth. There's energy moving back and forth with inside a pot of water. Those waves that are carrying energy back and forth, because previously the water was simply still. But when you added heat, breath, vitality, expansion and contraction, vibrations happen, and then you give birth to waves. That is Nun and Anet, the wave energy within the water substance. And once the waves begin to wave and carry energy back and forth throughout the pot, and there's activity going now within the pot, energy moving around, the waves begin to move so rapidly that they generate spheres that rise up from the waves and explode. And those spheres, of course, are bubbles, and they're full of heat, and then they pop. The same happened in the beginning with the wave energy, Nun and Anet, waving within the black substance. The wave energy of Nun and Anet, that masculine and feminine force, eventually the waves gave birth to spheres of energy that rose up out of the black substance and exploded. That was the first fire and light within the black substance. And this is where we get, you went from the black substance to an explosion of fire and light. And then the spherical energy that was given birth to begins to spiral throughout the black substance. That fire and light begins to carve out black spheres within the black substance. When it carves out a black sphere, the fire and light penetrates that black sphere and illuminates it. And those become the first stars. The fire and light manifests as a spherical serpent energy, is the manifestation of Ra and Ra'et, the first fire and light, divine living energy that came into existence, born of the wave energy within the black substance. The wave energy within the black substance is Nun and Nanet, and the waves give birth to spheres. And once those spheres manifest as fire and light and explode into fire energy and so forth, they begin to spiral throughout creation, carving out black spheres and illuminating or lighting up those black spheres. And those black spheres become the first stars. And of course, stars are black bodies. They give off black body radiation and so forth. So we go from the black substance, Amen and Amenet, hidden within the black substance. They give birth to the black substance, Ka and Kayet, the wave energy, manifest after Hehu and Hehud and so forth. The explosion happens. And then these spheres are carved out. The suns, stars, and so forth, and planets, bodies are birthed from the stars, and this is where we get our planet and so forth. So, and of course, the bodies of planets coming from the stars, the divine energy of Ra and Ra'et penetrating the primordial planetary bodies, illuminating them, causing separation and development from the denser portions and the lighter portions. And you have the core, and then you have the atmosphere, and it cools off and so forth. Everything you learn about geology in school and so forth, that cosmology is in alignment with that reality. Now, hold on a second. Okay. So what we show in that context is that Ra and Ra'et, the Creator and Creatress, are the children of Nun and Nanet, the wave energy, but Nun and Nanet are the children of Amen and Amenet, the great hidden being who gives birth. So Ra and Ra'et, the Creator and Creatress, the divine living energy moving throughout all of creation, creating the suns, moons, stars, planets, and so forth. The Creator and Creatress are the grandchildren of the Supreme Being. All traditional, authentic ancestral religion knows that. Nobody thinks that the Creator and the Supreme Being is the same thing. Everybody understands that the Creator and the Creatress are two halves of a divine whole. That is the great spirit of the Supreme Being, and they are grandchildren of the Supreme Being. Now, we always use the example on a macrocosmic level. If you look at the Afurakani man as an emanation of Amen, and the Afuraitkaitnit woman, the African Black woman, as an emanation of Amenet, then your body, you're Amen, you're like Amen and Amenet, the divine living energy that's surging through you, your firepower, your life force energy, the energy you send to your arms and legs to fight, to move, to attack, and so forth, to build and so forth, that divine living energy, that solar fire within you, that is your Ra force. If you're the man, that's your Ra'et force. If you're the woman, you are the great being, and you direct your Ra force to go out even during procreation to create a child and so forth. You direct your Ra force, your Ra'et force, your divine living energy to connect so that you can create. But you're the great being, and you direct your Ra force to create. You're the great being, and you direct your Ra'et force to create. The black substance within you internally, within your nervous system, 12 centers of the brain and so forth, the cervical nerves and so forth, and deep, within all your organs and tissues and glands and so forth, the internal stores of melanin, the black chemical, that is the black substance within you, that is your Ka and Ka'et. Of course, your expansion and contraction, Hehu is your breathing principle and so forth. So you're like the great being, Amen and Amenet. You have a black substance within you. All your organs, glands, and so forth are floating within that black chemical within your body, just like all the planets, suns, moons, and stars are floating within that black substance of space. We have a miniature version of that internally. You're like the great being. Inside of you is that black melanin chemical, just like it makes you black on the outside. It's inside of your organs, systems, glands, and so forth. And all of your organs, systems, and glands are floating within that black substance. But then, of course, you have energy. You have electromagnetic energy surging through you. That is your Nun and Nunet force. But that firepower, that solar firepower that you can expand and contract and so forth, that is your Ra force, your Ra'et force. So now we had to give that foundation so we can understand the nature of the divinity. Now we know, and we've learned, of course, in school, when light is refracted by rain or mist, it becomes a rainbow. Of course, when light is shined through a prism, it's broken up into a rainbow and so forth. So you see the manifestation of the rainbows and so forth. This is why we get into, in this particular section, we talk about Inyokunton is one of the terms for rainbow in Akan, and that's also the term for the female divinity of Ra'et. So there's an association of Inyokunpon and Inyokunton, Ra and Ra'et with the rainbow. And then we will see why. So in this particular section, we're just showing the Akan linguistic information. But when you want to look at the original hieroglyph, the circle with the dot in the middle, why do we use the circle with the dot in the middle to represent Ra and Ra'et, as well as the serpent surmounting the solar disk? When you see the solar disk with a rainbow surrounding it, or the lunar disk with a rainbow surrounding it, the sun halo, moon halo, and so forth, that is the original hieroglyph. That's where they copied the hieroglyph from. That's where it was taken from, nature itself. As you can see here, that is where the original glyph comes from. The circular rainbow or the arched rainbow and so forth, that's its origin. You also have dual rainbows. And so we say in comparison, you will find that in the Yoruba culture, Odumare is the creator, Olodumare or Odumare, Oshumare is the creatress. Oshumare is shown as a circular rainbow serpent swallowing its tail, the creatress of the universe, and Odumare is also shown as a serpent as well, and so forth in the cosmology of Yoruba people. And we have a quote from that. And then you have in the Ewe tradition and Fon tradition and Vodun, you have the rainbow serpent, Da, on the masculine side, and the female feminine rainbow serpent, Aidahuedo, on the feminine side, Da and Aidahuedo. Da is Ra, Aidahuedo is Ra'et. That is the creator and creatress, the rainbow serpent swallowing its tail, the creator and creatress of the universe, representing the collective ancestry of all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. So this is from a temple in Abobe in the Vodun tradition on the continent. So what you will find, whether it's Akan, Yoruba, ancient Kani Kemet, Vodun, and so forth, the Ra and Ra'et, the Yonkumpon and Yonkunton, Odumare, Oshumare, Da and Idahuedo, and anywhere across the continent, it's the same thing. The Creator and Creatress are the rainbow serpents. The Creator and Creatress operate through the sun, through the solar fire, and so forth. The Creator and Creatress represent the collective ancestry of all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. And we'll look at ancient texts when the Ra talks about men and women coming from his eye and so forth. The word for rainbow is also the name for the creative spirit who operates through the rainbow as a serpent. The Creator and Creatress take the form of great circular serpents and or swallowing their tails. In the earliest religious texts in existence, the earliest religious texts anywhere in the world that predate any other religious compositions are the Meru texts, the so-called pyramid texts. One entry from the Meru text, the pyramid text of Unas, the male serpent is bitten by the female serpent is bitten by the male serpent, heaven is enchanted, earth is enchanted, and you will find that these serpents, heaven and earth and so forth, the circular serpent swallowing its tail around the head, the circular serpent swallowing its tail around the feet and so forth. That's the heavenly serpent and the earthly serpent and so forth. You'll find that in Vodun with Da and Ida Wedo, they'll say there's 3,500 coils of the serpent in the sky and 3,500 coils of the serpent under the water in the sea on earth and so forth. The heavenly and the earthly serpent and so forth. You'll find that in Yonkumpon and in Yonkunton and Akan and so forth. The same cosmology for thousands of years across cultures carried in our blood circles. Now, let's switch over real quick. So when we talk about Ra'et herself, okay. So this is an image of Ra'et from the Temple of Kainsu in the precinct of Mut within Aperasedu, so-called Karnak and so forth. This is a specific temple that is under construction. So people are not able to visit. They haven't been able to visit for years and so forth. But we sought out specific permits that we had to access so that we can have access to this specific temple. So we were able to go in and see this great image of Ra'et herself. Now, let's show something from the earliest religious text. We just saw something from the Meru text, but let's check this out. I'm going to pull up a different. And this is just an entry talking about the great company of the divinities. Okay, so they're talking about the pyramid text, the Meru text of the Per-A Unas, so-called Pharaoh Unas. And you often hear in ancient Kemet the great company of the divinities, the Postjatu, and it's talking about Atem and Shu and Tefnut and Geb and Nut and Asara, Set, Nebuchadnezzar, and so forth. So in this particular section, let me scroll up right quick. So said again in the litany to the gods of the great company given in the Unas text, we see that the Paut Well, the great company contains Tim, Shu, Tefnu, Seb, Nut, Aset, Set, Nebet, Het, Tahuti, and Heru. Now, they talk about a couple of other texts and so forth, but here's the other piece that's important. So they talk about the great Paut, which is in the region of Anu, the great company of the deities within that region. Now, similarly, the gods of the little Paut, the little company of the divinities, are more than 9 in number. And in Unas, line 253, they are thus enumerated. Rat, which is also Ra'et, the dweller in Anu. Then another deity who's the dweller in Anchet. Another deity is the dweller in Het Sereket. Another deity is the dweller in the divine place. Another, the dweller in Hechpar. Another one, the dweller in Orion or Sahu and so forth. Another dweller in Tep and so forth. So they're listing all these deities who have dwelling places or shrines in different regions. But the head of the smaller company of the deities is Ra'et. Sometimes the name is spelled Rat, sometimes Ra'et and so forth. It's a dialectical difference. So in the earliest religious texts yet unearthed in the world, you have Ra'et mentioned at the head of the company of divinities. Now, when we go, we're going to show a video from Kemet when we visited Kemet. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is our page where we're talking about our upcoming trips to Kemet and so forth. But we also have some videos on the page from different visits to Kemet. And one of them is a short video, but it's very important. Now, so what's important about this is key, and it's key to everything we're talking about. Right as the creatress of the universe. She's the divine living force on the feminine side that animates all created entities, brings all created entities into being from nothing and so forth, but animates all created entities. The life force energy within you, the divine living energy within you, in order for you to function and have an energetic connection to plant life, animal life, mineral life, other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, as well as the spirits of our ancestresses and ancestors. You have an energetic link to them. The energy emanating from you connects with the energy emanating from them, and you can communicate across that bridge of energy to not only the spirits of plant life, animal life, mineral life, other Afuraitkaitnit people, but spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors, as well as the spirits of the deities, the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the spirit forces that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, the oceans, rivers, atmosphere, fire, water, earth, and air, and so forth, the planets, the black substance of space, the spiritual forces that animate all features of creation, deep within the core of earth, and so forth. We build an energetic bridge between us, and then our spirits travel across that energetic bridge so we can communicate with the forces in nature. We can communicate with our ancestresses and ancestors. Spirit possession can take place. Spirit communication can take place. Divination can take place, and so forth. So our link to Ra'et is the link to our life force energy itself, the expansion and contraction of that energy, the replenishment of that energy, our connection to all of creation in the spiritual sense is dependent on her. Now, we have people going back and forth to Kemet for years, taking people back and forth to Kemet for years and so forth, because we use the same mindset very often. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Because we very often come into studying culture from the same mindset as Europeans, since Europeans don't focus on Ra'et, they focus on Ra, they focus on Amen, they focus on Ptah, they focus on masculine divinities, and then they will give a side note saying, oh, the Egyptians gave their gods wives, but they don't have a prominent place in the, cosmology. Pure foolishness. We communicate with these divinities, they possess us, they animate us, they direct us through divination, healing, learning the procuring of medicine through plant life, animal life, mineral life, and so forth. We have a relationship with these divinities. Non-stop, never stop. But if we have that mindset, that corrupted mindset, a Eurocentric mindset, we'll read text from Kemet. If they don't focus on the feminine, then we don't focus on the feminine. If they say Ra created the world and they show texts about Ra creating the world, then we'll say, well, Ra created the world. If we're tuned in culturally, even if we don't know certain details, if we're to say Ra created the world, which of course Ra did, but then Ra'et will not allow us to stop there. She will make us come and seek her out. Even if we didn't know her name, she will make us come seek her out. And we seek her out to seek, well, there must be a feminine, because she would show us that internally, spiritually, intuitively. She would direct us to evidence of that. So when we look at this video, when I went to Kemet, of course, I was looking for a Ra'et when I went. The first time I went to Kemet, this particular video is from the first time I went to Kemet. When I went to Kemet the very first time, I went by myself. When I was in the temple of Apet, I said to you, I was walking through the columns and I wanted to find Ra'et. That was one of the first things I wanted to find. And of course, I also wanted to find Aminet. And so this is what I was doing. And when we go in September, you will be in the same place, walking through these same columns, and you'll discover the same thing. And to find her, so I asked them, Samanful, my ancestral spirits, to show me where she should be. Walked near a column, and I looked up, and I was standing right up under her. And so I took this video. And that's her, and as you can see right here, this is her name, spelling out Ra'et. Ra'et Sawi, Ra'et, the mistress of the two lands, meaning Ra'et of the world. Okay. So when we're naturally paying attention and asking the Nsamafo to show us what's going on, then they will direct us not only spiritually, but they will give us physical, tangible evidence of what's taking place, of the cosmology. So you have people who walk by, stand in front of these columns. They will see an image of Ra on the column. They'll stand next to it and say, this is Ra. He's the creator of the universe. Very often they'll call him the sun god, which is totally inaccurate because Aten is the sun god, Atenit is the sun goddess, and Ra and Ra'et will work with Aten and Atenit. They will possess the sun, just like a spirit will possess someone through spirit possession to move through their body. The spirits also possess the sun, possess the planets, and so forth. And through spirit possession, they will use their energy to use the Aten, Atenit, the sun, to transmit their energy. So, but people will say, this is Ra, the sun god. They'll stand up under that column. Everybody will take pictures, and then they'll move on. Ra'et will be standing right next to Ra, or right next to Atim, and so forth, and they will go right to the next individual. What makes our people totally neglect the fact that that's RAIT? Because since the Europeans don't focus on her, and we've been conditioned like them, then we don't focus on her. So we'll just go right along. But if we're trying to align ourselves with divine order, as soon as you seek to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, then you're going to seek to align yourself with the divine balance of male and female. That will manifest as aligning with Amin, Aminet, Ka, Kaet, Hehu, Hehu, Nun, and Anet, Ra and Raed, Atim, Atimet, Shu and Tefnut, Geb and Nut, Asar and Aset, Set and Nebet, Ma'ah, the male deity of divine law and balance, and Ma'at, the female divinity of divine law and balance. And of course, we showed that we did a whole 6-week course on Ma'al, the male deity of divine law and balance, the counterpart of Ma'at, and so forth. So this is that's what we're dealing with. So so let's go back a little bit. Okay, so we're getting back to the Ra and Riot book. Okay, so in that section, we were just showing certain different names and so forth and titles. In that section, we were talking about the title Ra'aku or Ra'ak, which is a title of Ra in one of the texts and so forth, and it shows the aspect of the illuminated fire and so forth, and why the solar disk is very often called the Eye of Ra and so forth. So that was just dealing with a specific title, but it was also showing the origin of the term in Yonkumpon and all of that. So we don't have to go through that portion, but now. So in this section, give a little bit more detail, showing the different dialectical variants of the name. So we already broke down the name of, the open mouth, the forearm with the open palm, the T and so forth, Rat, Raet, different versions of that. Sometimes instead of a feminine seated, there's a reared cobra serpent that represents a feminine divinity. Now, you also have these versions. Once again, the mouth, open mouth glyph, forearm with open palm, that's R and A, Ra. Then the two reads together are the E sound, but sometimes the E sound, solar disc, and the bread loaf, which is the T sound. So that's Ra'it or Ra'et. Here's Ra'et, and the determinative is the serpent, coiled serpent sitting on top of the basket and so forth, Ra'et. And then Ra'et once again. So 3 different versions of Ra'et. That's simply a dialectical variant of Rat. And you will Rat to Ra'at, and you go from Ra'at to Ra'et. And within Afurakani languages, you will find these different, dialectical variants. For example, in the Akan language, the word for woman is Oba, Oba in the Asante dialect, O-B-A-A, and the first A is high, so Oba means woman. If you have the first A that's low, Oba, then that means he opens. But if you say Oba, that means woman. So Oba in the Asante dialect for woman, but Obea means woman in the Akwamu dialect. So Oba, woman. Obea, woman. So when you look at these dialects, and that's common across Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit languages. You have RAIT, is one dialectal variant, RAIT, the A becomes in another dialectal variant. Same thing as far as names in the Akan tradition. If you have someone who is Afua, which is a Friday born woman, born of the divinity Afi or Afua, that's in the Asante dialect, Kwamu dialect, and so forth. But if you hear someone say Efua, then that's the Fanti dialect. Instead of saying Afua, they say Efua. A woman born on Wednesday, a child of the female divinity Akua, they're called Akua or Aquia. In the Asante dialect, it's Equia in the Fanti dialect. So it's the change between the A and the E. If you have the title, an honorific title for a woman, Awura, which means, a higher level in society, woman, Awura, that's in the Asante dialect. Ewuraba is the Fanti dialect. So once again, it's the interchange between the A and the E. Afua, Efua, Akua, Ekua, Awura, Ewuraba, same thing. So Ra'at or Ra'et, different dialectical variants. That is common knowledge when people practice ancestral religion and, study some ancestral language. And when we look at the text of Kemet, we see our languages played out even in the Medutu, certain hieroglyphs, which show the tone changes and so forth, which Europeans don't have tone changes in their language that change the meaning of terms. So that's just, once again, proof of our culture now. We just want to show one final thing on this section. You have the Konton Kurowi, the rainbow around the sun, Konton Kuro Sarane, rainbow around the moon. So we have the proverb in Akan, Ohini ye Uria, Ohima ye Osarane. The king is the sun, the queen mother is the moon. So the sun and the moon govern the entire nation, of course. But when you look at the sacred Usek collar of ancient Kemet, and then you look at this cosmologically, so you have the sovereign, Ohini ye Oria, the king is the sun, Ohini or Ohima ye Osarane, the queen mother is the moon. So you have the quote unquote sun and the moon, and they have the multicolored great Usek or collar. That is the rainbow around the sun, the rainbow around the moon, the rainbow around the sun, the rainbow around the moon. You see the same with the divinities, for example, Ptah, who's Obuade in Akan, and Obaluaye in Yoruba, and Sakpata in Vodun, and so forth. And then you have the divinity Heheru, who is Cheche in Akan, Afia, Afu in Akan, Oshun in Yoruba, Irzuli in Vodun, and so forth. But you see these, the rainbow collar, the Usek collar surrounding the sovereign. And of course, you see Ra and Ra'et wearing that collar itself. Once again, they're the great, they are the originators of this rainbow collar structure. And Usek hair, side of Ra, Usek het, the Uraeus goddess, Arat goddess, and so forth. It's referencing in that context, right? So now, we want to get into some more detailed information about one of our major titles. Okay. 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 And if there are any questions, of course, in the chat room, I'm just going through some of the information before we go to the final piece. Yes, so cobras, the serpent divinity itself, and of course in ancient Kemet with the uh, hooded cobras and so forth, those are sacred symbols, animal totems for Ra and Riot. That's why even their name is spelled sometimes simply with the cobra serpent, the hooded cobra that surmounts the sun. Those are animal totems for Ra and Riot. And then because of that, it lends itself to their animal totems for other divinities as well. But yes. Okay, so there's a question about Reiki. Let me just pull this up right quick. Excuse me. Because we addressed this in one of our books. So we're going to pull that up real quick. Okay. And it is important information because a lot of people ask about that. So the question was about Reiki and the title, Reiki and Ray and so forth. So one of our books is on the origin of the term yoga, karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. And for those who came in a little bit later, I've published 31 books so far. We have some more books coming out. The books that I'm showing today are a few of the books I've published. All 31 books, the ebook versions of all 31 of the books I've published are free downloads from the website. So you can download every one of the books for free at any time. It's the full version, the ebook version. The free version is the full version of the book. So the origin of the term yoga, karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra is one of those books. And in that book, of course, we were talking about the term yoga. We showed the etymology of the term yoke or yonk and so forth, where they stole the term, the Proto-Indo-European language phylum. Term yuk, yuka, meaning to join or unite, comes from yonk and so forth. And we show that, and we show the glyph. You see the domesticated animal, which represents the term ankh, with the ankh around his neck. So we go into some detail about that. We show the ankh is the same as the Aku Abadal in the Akan culture. And we show linguistically that ankh is also yonk, and that became yok or yoke, yoka, and so forth. But there's an entire cosmology revolving around that. And then we go into the second part of the book, showing that the term kara is the origin of the term kakra, which is later corrupted into chakra and so forth. And we show the cosmology of the deities governing the 7 knots along the spine and so forth. We show the text in Kemet talking about the 7 knots upon the spine. a number of different details, but in the appendix, so yoga and chakra are terms that are stolen from our culture now. And we show those same terms in the Akan language as well. Now, if you look at the term Reiki, they'll say Rei means universal and Ki means, life force energy and so forth. But Re is a corruption. They say it means universal is corruption of Ra. Even today, Europeans say Amun, Re, and so forth. And it's really Amen, Ra. So that's a corruption of that. Asians did not create the term Ki. You'll find that term in the Fang language in Gabon, for example, Cameroon and Gabon and so forth. Ki means divine living energy in the Fang language, but that's because it means the same thing in ancient Kanini Kemet. In fact, we should have a. Just give me 1 second. There is one section where we. All right. Okay, so you'll see that Ki, the exalted one, the god, Ki, the winged disc, Kai, another version of exalted one. So once again, you have the dialectical variants. You have Ki, the exalted one, the high one, the one who's above, the exalted one, the divinity, Ki. Another variation that is Kai, Kai, which is Kai, the exalted one, that's a title of Ra. So whether it's Kai or Ki, that is a title of Ra, the divinity, the divine living energy animating creation on the masculine side. And Kait is a title for RAIT as well. Now, you see Pa Ra means the divinity Ra. Pa is the definite article and so forth, like the or the in English. Pa Ra became Para. Europeans started saying Pare, meaning the god Re, and they'll say Re and so forth. Amun Re, as we said before. Pa also means flame, fire, spark. So para, pra is the origin of the term pran, and later prana. So they'll say prana is the divine living energy and so forth. That comes from pra. That's what that is. All right. So, but when you look at that book, you'll see the details of where they stole these terms. But we have the full cosmology going back to coffin texts and prior to that in ancient Kemet, talking about the 7 deities that govern the, 7 shrine spaces up and down the spine and all of that, the knots along the spine and all of that. So predating Hinduism by thousands of years. Okay, so we're going to go out of this. And we're going to get to this final piece about a major title. So we wrote, this is another one of our books, Afuraitkaitnit, the origin of the term Africa. In this text, of course, we show that the term Africa comes from Afuraka. Afuraitkaitnit does not come from the Roman general and all that nonsense that misinformed individuals put forward. We prove the fallacy of those fake titles. We also, for example, show the etymological origin of the term Al-Kabulan, which is not an indigenous term for the continent. It's actually a corruption of an Arabic term. So that is not an original ancient name for the continent. People were not aware of that, so we had to give the etymology of Al-Kabulan to prove that, and the cosmology associated with that etymology. Where did it come from? So we did that. But So we're not going to go through the entire piece, but what's important is this section, this portion here. So this is Ra sitting in the solar boat, the solar disk, and so forth. So they'll say that the solar disk is sitting in a boat sailing from the east to the west, from sunrise to sunset. That Ra is sitting in the boat of the sun. His energy is penetrating the sun and so forth and illuminating the sun. So you see Ra in the form of a falcon-headed divinity. He's sitting in the boat of the sun. The sun sails across the sky. The blue sky is akin to a mass of moisture. And then the solar disk is in a boat sailing across that from sunrise to sunset. Then they get out of that boat, and then the boat goes into the underworld. The sun goes into the underworld, the darkness for the 12 hours of the night. And Ra takes on a different form when he goes into the underworld in the boat in the 12 hours of the night. They switch boats. He gets into the Sektet boat, and he takes the form of a deity, a land animal. First, he was in the form of a avian animal, a bird flying across the sky and so forth. When they go in the underworld, the solar energy is in the underworld, the underground, in the blackness and so forth. And he takes the form of a flat-horned ram divinity and so forth. And he's not called Ra, he's called Afura. And Afu means flesh, but it also means house or place of residence. So with solar energy, when you take in solar energy, the first is just solar energy, and you breathe it in and it gets inside of your body. Now it's encased inside your body. It's inside your flesh. So it's encased in something, but it's also inside your house or place of residence. So that solar energy that was out here, or even just the air that was outside, you can call it air. When it gets inside your body and it's encased in your lungs, it is air inside of the flesh. So you can call it Afu, air. Afu means flesh. Afu also means house or place of residence. When you take in solar energy by taking a deep breath and so forth, it was solar energy you took in the Ra force. Now it gets inside your body. It's Afu Ra. It's Ra in the Afu. Ra inside the flesh. Ra inside the matter. Ra's energy is animating this physical body and illuminating it and giving it power and vitality. So Ra takes the form of the flat-horned ram divinity, a land animal, Afu Ra. For the 12 hours of the night, when they get to the region of the dawn, sunrise, he gets out of that boat, gets in the other boat, takes on that falcon-headed form, and then goes up in the sky, and now he's Ra sailing across the sky. So Afura is moving through the underworld. Now, let's just go down real quick. To our appendix. In ancient Kemet, the word ka and kaet are the masculine and feminine terms for a highland, land above the banks of the river, land high above the surface of the Nile. Kaet and ka, the masculine and feminine terms. In the Coptic dialect, you see kaye and koe and so forth, different dialectal variants. Ka, kaet, the high place on which the God of creation stood. So you have Kat, a highland, high place, high fine building, and all of that. In the particular text that we were referencing in this portion, it talks about Ra creating the world, and he said that he settled on the high mound, the Ka, the Kai, so that the only place that came up out of the primordial water at the beginning of the universe and so forth. So when we're talking about the planet Earth, it was originally covered by water. Then the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at penetrated the earth itself, the ocean floor, caused volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor. Those volcanic eruptions caused a portion of the ocean floor to surge upward and break through the surface of the water. And when that took place, that was the first high land or mountain land and so forth. That was the first highland, the first highland, mountain, highland, hill, and so forth. Kayat, caused the first landmass to break through the surface of the water. That was the only landmass on Earth. Then the divinity Ra and Ra'at's energy, they penetrated that primordial landmass, illuminated it, fired it up, made it vital, full of vitality and so forth. And then it became a fertile land, and then plant life and mineral life and all of that was able to grow and so forth. But that first Kayat, the first landmass of Earth, was penetrated by the energy of Ra and Ra'at. And when they were moving through the landmass, and that divine solar fire came inside of the landmass to warm it up, fire it up, make it vital, Ra becomes Afura, Ra moving inside of matter. Afuraitkait, Ra'at moving inside of matter. That became the Ka of Afura, the land of Afura, Afuraka, the land of the Creator. Afuraitkait, the land of the Creatress. So the whole book goes into the entire cosmology of that. And in the temple of Set in Paraka, so-called Philae, in southern Kemet, they have Ahraka. That's a variation of Afraka and so forth. One of those dialectical variants. Once again, we will visit that temple, and I'll show a video of that. But that's why we have these two spellings, Ahraka and Afrakat. That's Afraka and Afuraitkaitnit, a different variation of that. But so this book is talking about that. We go into detail about that. We show the cosmology. We show everything, various details to prove it in various ways. Now, what's important about that, however, and this is that Temple of Paraka, so-called Philae, in southern Kemet, but what's important about that in part 4 of the book, we get into some detailed information, and we need to show a title of RAIT that people are unaware of, and we just touched on it. Excuse me. So the term Afrika, the term that the original Berbers, the Black Berbers of ancient North Afurakai, they are called Afrika today. They are the ancient AFRI people. We talked about that earlier in the book. So sometimes it's spelled Afrika, AFRI, and sometimes they spell it Afrika, just as we saw Ahraka, it's Afraka, and so forth. Let's show an image of those ancient Black Berbers. Those are some Fulani women, but this is an ancient Black Berber. So the European type in North Africa today, like in Libya and different places, Tunisia, these are white invaders, just like the white Arabs invaded Kemet and they're living in quote unquote Egypt now and they're in control. Some of their relatives invaded the northern part of Africa a few thousand years ago, and they're in control in certain parts of the northern part of the continent, but there are still original Black Berbers living in North, all across North Afuraitkaitnit today. The Tuareg Berbers and so forth, the Afrika people, they're still there. Just like their original Black people in Kemet, we're going to show a video of that as well, who we met there. But Tuareg women, Tuareg is the T, Areg, Areka, Arika people. This is the ancient Upuk, the second Berber, quote unquote, Libyan king of Kemet, 23rd dynasty. Now, for those who, well, let's skip past that right now. We were proving early in the book that the terms, when they try to say Africa comes from the Greek term, Roman term, Arabic term, Phoenician term, all these different Hindu or Sanskrit term, we showed that each one of those false definitions are false. And we show the origin of the Roman or Latin term apreka, they stole it from perek, pre in ancient Kemet. The Greek term Afrik, meaning not cold, they stole from Afri, from the Medutu in ancient Kemet. Apara in Sanskrit, they stole from Pera in ancient Kemet. Parak or Fariki in Phoenician was taken directly from ancient Kemet, Pariki and so forth. Every single term that they put forward from these different languages and different groups trying to say they named the continent, we show that's totally false, and it was stolen from specific terms in the language of Kemet that we proved in the Medutu and the hieroglyphs. Now, it's an Afar woman from Ethiopia, but scroll up real quick. This is the other piece we wanted to touch on. In the ancient Black Berber Bibri cosmology, which is over 10,000 years old, in North Afuraitkaitnit, there's a female divinity called Ifru. She's also called Ifri or Efri or Afri. They recognize her as a sun goddess and a cave goddess. Ifri or Afri was the most influential female divinity. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Roman author Pliny the Elder stated that nobody in Africa began any undertaking without first consulting the goddess Africa. Africa was the Roman title of the Berber Abosom Afri. They called her Dea Africa, the goddess Africa, and so forth. You look at the feminine goddess Africa with the headdress, the elephant headdress, and so forth. She's reposing on a bench. These are two coins stamped during the time of the Roman occupation of northern Afuraitkaitnit. You see the goddess Africa, on these coins. Now, those particular coins during the time of Hadrian. Now, why would they call her a sun goddess and a cave goddess? And let's switch over real quick. Because when you know the cosmology, because we deal with these actual deities, then we understand what's taking place. Europeans who don't understand that, they'll make up other things. Now, this is a site talking about Berber cosmology, Tamazight, mythology, and so forth. The list of Berber gods and goddesses. Afri, which is Afrika, a Berber goddess of fortune and fertility. Amin, which they start saying Aman and so forth. Amit, which is Aminet. You also have Aliswa. You have Atlas, quote unquote, Ash, which is an ancient deity from Kemet and so forth. So you'll find that some deities from so-called Phoenicia and so forth that were popular there. You find these in the Berber cosmology because we were living in North Africa. Some of our people migrated across the so-called Mediterranean Sea into the Near East, established culture. So we took the culture up there. Some people remained in North Afuraitkaitnit, and so forth. So you'll see there's a continuity of culture between North Afuraitkaitnit and the Near East, especially where, so-called Phoenicia and the Carthaginian, civilization was and so forth. You'll find, they'll say the Punic deities and so forth. They'll find them in, North Africa, but these were the same people. But then Europeans started invading and sticking Roman fake deities and things and so forth. Now, let's go back to a second. Now, when you Google information about the goddess Africa, this is what they will show. And they will very often misrepresent the information. So they will say it's personification of Africa by the Romans in the early centuries. Of course, the Berbers already had the divinity, as we show. AFRI is actually RAIT, who is called AFRAIT or AFRI, which is AFRI, but they don't know anything about that. So her iconography typically included an elephant mask, headdress, a cornucopia, military standard, and a lion. So you see that they are painting her white at this point, and she has the elephant headdress. Now, this is 2nd century mosaic. And by that time, of course, Europeans had taken over. So you see these light-skinned versions of her. Now, some of them will try to say that she's simply a province personification, like Britannia, Hispania, Macedonia, and so forth. But to the Romans, the distinction between goddesses who received worship and personification figures understood to be literary and iconographic conveniences was very elastic, and Africa seems to have been on the boundary between the two. She was certainly not a major deity, but may have received some religious cult at times. In reality, she is the major deity. So notice they're editorializing, saying she certainly wasn't a major deity. But if you go back to the time frame when Pliny the Elder, in his natural story, let's click on this really quickly. Pliny the Elder was a Roman author, naturalist, natural philosopher. He was born in quote unquote AD 23 or 24, died AD 79 and so forth. So, very famous author. But he was living at the time. So they say, well, she certainly wasn't a major deity. What does the person who was living at the time, looking around, saying about this deity he sees the people worshiping? In his book, Natural Story, he wrote, this is in Latin, it says, no one in Africa does anything without first calling on Africa. Talking about the goddess Africa. Talking about without first calling on her. Nobody in Africa does anything without first calling on her. Now, when you juxtapose the editorializing of a writer like whoever wrote this article on Wikipedia, or you see other sites, they say, oh, she was just a personification of the region. She wasn't a major deity. They don't know anything about this deity. They're just using their own corrupted mindset, biased mindset, trying to reduce the functioning of divinity. But the person who was living there at the time, that's the most important deity, period. Nobody does anything without consulting her first. There's a reason for that. And that's, of course, the people haven't, those who are writing about this also have not consulted and, did field research with the Tuareg, with the Berbers and so forth to know who this deity is. But we already know who she is because it's part of our cosmology, who we still worship to this day, in the Akan tradition and other traditions as well. So let's go back to the actual book. They said that AFRI, they would say AFRI means cave and so forth. It also has to do with a goddess, but they also knew that she was, dealing with the sun. So they were like, she's a sun goddess and a cave goddess. They couldn't understand why AFRI could be a sun goddess and a cave goddess. What does the sun have to do with the cave? Excuse me. But when you know the cosmology, it makes perfect sense. And we just went over a portion of it. Hold on a second. So, once again, this is another depiction of Ra in his form as Afu-Ra, the flat-horn ram, when he's in the underworld, the divine living energy, solar energy, fire moving within the flesh and so forth, within the Afu. So he becomes Afu-Ra. When he's sailing through the sky, he's animating the sun, quote unquote, sun god. But when he goes in the underworld, and you have the books of the Duat and so forth in ancient Kemet, the book of the underworld and so forth, what they also call it is the book of caverns. The major text of the New Kingdom of Kemet is called the Book of Caverns, the Book of Caves. That means going through the underworld. When you look at the imagery of the solar disk going from every hour of the night in the underworld, it's a series of caverns, caves, and so forth that the black sun, Afura, is moving through. So he's a quote unquote sun divinity, a divinity that animates the sun, but he's also a cave divinity, quote unquote. He's as Afura, he's moving in the underworld. The same is true of Ra'et. She operates through the solar disk. She's Ra'et, sailing through the sky and so forth. But then when she's moving in the underworld, she's called Afrait, and Afrait becomes Afrai, and Afrait becomes Afri, sun goddess and a cave goddess, the spiritual force animating the flesh, enlivening, empowering, illuminating the flesh, empowering us and so forth. So we say here, it should also be noted that the reason why the Arabs define Ifriqiya or Ifriqiya, which they got from the Romans, they are Africa, they say Afriqiya, as queen of heaven, is because Ra'et is the divinity who is the queen, the Herit of heaven. She's the creatress operating through the most prominent heavenly orb, the Aten, the sun. The Arabs learned of the goddess Ifriqiya from the Romans. This is why the Berbers later in their true story were referred to by the Arabs as the Banu Ifran, the children of Afri or Ifri and so forth. Africa was recognized by the Romans and others as the Ka, the land of Afri, the land of the goddess Afri and so forth, Africa. Now, but the Romans learned of her from the Berbers. So that name Ifri, Ifru, Afra, all of that, not created by the Romans, of course. These are different images of Ra'et. Temple of Khensu, as we said, show earlier, this is from a stela in Herkau. This is a late period image of RAIT during the Roman period and so forth. So we also talk about, in addition to RAIT, the Berbers also worshipped Amen, Al-Sar, Set, many other divinities and so forth. And then we talk a little bit about the Tuareg and Fula, Tuareg Berbers and so forth, and give some cosmology dealing with that. But so let us get to, we're going to show a couple of things that we touched on before. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Okay, so we just talked about the region of Philae in southern Kemet. And we talked about the Nubitu, the Nubians are still there. And when we were there last spring, this is where we were at. The Nubians are still running the ferry boats from the mainland to the island. These are the original people of Kemet who still live in the south. The Arabs are in control right now, but these are the direct descendants who still live there. So when we showed that image of Afuraitkaitnit, male and female terms, a different dialectical variant of Afurakan, Afuraitkaitnit, a title of the ancient mound. They would say in Parakafila, that's the original mound of creation manifested from under the some of the Nubitu children. We visit a Nubia village when we go to Kemet. And they come up to the boat and sing and, sell their wares and everything. So this is the Nubian village, the one that we visited. And you'll notice when we, in their living rooms, they keep baby crocodiles. They raise them until they get to a certain, size, and then they release them into the river. That's a turtle inside the home complex. But you'll see these are actually crocodile heads. And you'll see, Khan tradition, Yoruba tradition, even in North America, you'll see people with crocodile or alligator heads, small alligator heads. These are shrines of certain divinities like Sobek, which is Odin Shimon Khan, and Akjakpan in Kodun. Sacred animal totems, deities. Odin the crocodile is the sacred animal totem for Osama Fram, a Patrick divinity in our Khan culture, for example. So this is inside the living room. These are the crocodiles they have in their living room under a little gate and so forth. But once they get to a certain size, they have to release them into the water. But they have a relationship. You see the children standing on the backs of crocodiles while they're swimming and so forth. So when you see this child Heru standing on top of crocodiles, that was a symbolic thing. Europeans didn't know that until they saw. They assumed Heru standing on top of crocodiles, subduing the animal nature and so forth. But it is that, but it's also literal. So this is one of the places you will visit with us when you join us to go to Kemet in September. Okay. Now, that was one piece we wanted to show you. When we talk about
the hot with the four part of a lion, that means the first or the foremost, and then
hold
Shapsu.
on 1 second. So Tuya and Yuya, mother and father of Queen T, and their bodies are actually inside of the museum in Cairo. Great grandparents of Tutankhamen. So when you go into that space, or what's important is when we go into these whether it's a museum like this or a temple, tomb, shrine space, when we enter this space, and the spirits of the ancestors and ancestors, who of course are connected to us and us only, then they enter the space as well. The Europeans are just milling around the space. The ancestral spirits are not there to greet them at all because these are the enemies. But when we enter the space, when the children come into the space, then they come into the space with us. The energy fills the space. When we go into a space like this, it becomes a sacred ritual. It's like literally like a wake, like a funeral, because you can feel and communicate with the spirit of the ancestor and ancestors. This is the body that their spirit used to dwell in and so forth, and that energy becomes magnetic. So you'll see Tuya and Yuya when we go. That's a form of ancestral community. And when we went last time, there were a number of people in the museum at that particular time, but once we got around the space, asked the Nsamanfo to disperse these Europeans, and they all dispersed, and it was just us standing by the ancestor and ancestors at that point. But that's their actual papyrus. Okay. Okay. All right. So we just want to check. That's the information we wanted to share on Ra'et. She's of course incorporated in ritual. She's Ida Huedo in Vodun, she's in Yonkunton in Akan, she's Oshumare in Yoruba. So even though people practicing these traditions and so forth, if they weren't studying anything about Kemet, they may not know that that's Ra'et. In our book and in our culture and classes and so forth, we prove that just to show people who's who. But whether we invoke her by Ra'et or invoke her as in Yonkunton, or invoke her as Ushumari, or invoke her as, Aidakwedo, or whatever name she goes by, and whatever ancestral religious tradition that we are a part of, she is central, of course, to creation. There's no strengthening, there's no spiritual development, there's no spiritual cultivation, there's no spirit possession, there's no divination without Ra'et. Nothing is taking place without her. So you can't just invoke Ra or Odumare or Inyokupan and so forth and think that you're going to be balanced. Without Ra'et, nothing is happening. The universe doesn't even exist, but nothing is going on. There's no realignment spiritually. If you're off track and you're trying to realign yourself, your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order, there's no realignment without invoking Ra and Ra'et in balance. Amen and Amenet, or Nyame and Nyamewa in balance, and so forth. Okay. Let me see. I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Okay. So the headdress that you see of RAIT, and she is the progenitress. You'll see other, female divinities wearing this similar headdress, inclusive of Heneru, the solar disc with the horns and so forth. But you also see Set wearing that headdress and some others. But they're all taking after their progenitress, their mother, which is Ra'at. Okay. Okay. So when you see on this page here, so we have a trip to Kemet. The next trip we have to Kemet coming up is September 26th through October 4th, going to 13 different sites, 12 cities, from northern Kemet all the way through southern Kemet and into Khanid, into Nubia, Abu Simbel, and so forth. And also, of course, as we saw, Paraka, so-called Philae. But going up, all the way through the entire country, the various tombs, temples, and so forth. We also will have part of the journey is a cruise going from Abu Simbel through southern Kemet towards the north, all the way to Pet Reset, which is Luxor, and so forth. So a number of different things that are happening. We have the trip September 26th through October 4th, but then we also, when you look on the page, when you scroll a little bit further down, you will see the trip from June 4th to June 12th next year. So basically, we have a yearly trip in the spring. It was usually May. Next year to be the beginning of June 4th through June 12th. But for people who didn't want to wait until June, we decided to do an autumn tour, September 26th through October 4th. But either way, we have spaces available. Now, we sent out an email a couple of days back. We have a few discounted spaces, 50% discounted spaces, a few of them for September and a few of them for June. So we're only able to do a couple of those. We did that previously once before. So we just wanted to be able to offer that for just a couple of people. We only had a couple of spots for that. So instead of paying $3,000 for the entire, trip, and that includes round trip airfare from JFK Airport in New York, all of the accommodations, the cruise and everything else, vegan meal options and so forth. You'll see all the details on the piece, but our tour is $3,000. Most people charge about $4,000 or more, maybe $3,800 and so forth. We want to keep it as reasonable as possible. So ours is $3,000, but we have a couple of spaces for $1,500 or 50% discount. Of course, we can only do that for a couple of spaces. We typically have about 20 or more, but around 20 people at the most for a trip. We don't want to have our goal was never to have like 60 or 80 people and so forth. A smaller group allows us to cover more ground and, go in and out of places with ease and so forth. So without multiple buses and things like that, we didn't want to do all of that. So, so we were only able to offer that for a couple of people. So we have a couple of spaces open for the 50% discount. So instead of paying $3,000 for the trip, it would be $1,500. We have a couple of spaces for that for the September trip coming up, and then a couple of them for the June trip coming up. When you go on this site, when you scroll down to the June flyer, or you can scroll down to the September flyer, you'll see the special. Let me just scroll down to that real quick. Oh, first, let's just show this. That's the old flyer, but this, so you see like it's 13, well, 14 different videos showing different parts of, the trip and the different places that we went and things that were happening, just so you can get a feel for what's taking place. But when you scroll down past that to the September flyer, you see that here. It's 3 pages, and up under it is the regular payment button, but then you also see the special 50% discount offer, and that's down here. If you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the June 4th through June 12th for next year. And up under that set of flyers, those 3 pages, you will see that special 50% discount offers there as well. So basically what it is, in order to take advantage of that, it's only a few spaces. You have to pay the $1,500 up front or 50% down, $750, and within a couple of weeks, the other $750. But it's first come, first serve. It's only a couple of spots open for that because we're not able at this point to offer that to a large number of people. Maybe in a few years we will be able to do that, but right now we can only do that for a couple of spots. But we did that because we wanted to put, certain people were saying like they never thought they would ever be able to go to Cometa, or it might be years before they could go. So we were able to do that for a couple of spots, and that gives some people the opportunity to actually go. Now, there's another piece with regard to that. We have the financing options. You can make payments, get on your own payment plan in a couple of ways. You can do your own payment plan. So $300 deposit, or it can be a higher deposit, but a minimum $300 deposit to reserve your space. And then you can make monthly payments. You can decide the payment amount, but depending on which trip you take, it has to be complete within 30 days before the trip and so forth. So you have to have the entire balance in. So people can do it that way, making monthly payments. That's what most people do. Well, most people, certain people will pay up front, but that's one way. But then also when you go into PayPal has different options for financing as well. They have a pay in 4 option where you qualify for that. You can make 4 payments, or they also have PayPal Pay Later. So when you click on the button and you choose the trip and so forth, for example, one of the options for Pay Later is they have like $149 a month for 24 months, basically. So you pay through PayPal. PayPal covers the $3,000 for the trip, and then you simply pay PayPal once a month for 24 months, 149 or 160, or whatever rate that they give you based on your qualification. That way your trip is automatically covered, and then you're in. You can go, and then you're just paying PayPal off. It's no different than a credit card or a line of credit to cover a trip. Just like if you had a $3,000 credit card and just paid it, put it on the credit card, you paid the credit card over the next 24 months and paid it off. And this way, PayPal has its own pay later option, which is really a PayPal line of credit to do that. So some people were able to do that. They didn't have the funds up front, but they qualified for PayPal, and they were able to, go on the trip. So you can go either the June trip, May trip and so forth. I'm sorry, either the June trip for next year or this coming autumn, September 26th through October 4th. Okay, so it is 10 o'clock. We wanted to not go too much further than that. We didn't want to go beyond 2 hours for this presentation. We will save this, we will upload it and so forth. so people still have access to it. You can share the information with people who you know would benefit. You can also share our trip information for people who would benefit. We the special discount offers are first come, first serve. So you can let them know, and maybe you all can go on the trip together and so forth. So, of course, if you have any questions, just hit us up on our website. You can hit us up via email, kwesiakan@gmail.com, or, Instagram, Odwirafo, Facebook, Kwesiakan, or Odwirafo Akan. Twitter is Odwirafo. We're on TikTok as well as Odwirafo, but more so Instagram, more so, and Facebook, and then of course the regular website. But look on the Afuraitkaitnit page on the website, and I can put that in the chat room just so you can see it. Okay, so that's the direct link to the website, Afuraitkaitnit, and that is Afuraitkaitnit is defined as the cosmology of creation. Afuraitkaitnit, the work of creation and so forth, the divine works and so forth. So that's why we call it that. Okay. Okay, let me just make sure we didn't have any. Okay, the question ain't the special reason why Kayat, black substance, space, and Kayat, landmass, sound have resemblance is that land is made up of the same substance. Yes, so the primordial black mound that rose up to burst through the surface of the water to become the first Kayat, highland, land above the surface of the water, the first landmass of Earth. And once that Kayat, the masculine and feminine aspects of that mountain, exploded to the surface of the water, then the energy of Ra and Ra'et entered the primordial landmass and fired it up and hardened it and so forth. So Afura and Afuraitkaitnit were moving through the Ka and Kayat and so forth. Yes, that primordial black mound comes from that, primordial black substance that made up the planet Earth, which was originally a little portion of the primordial black substance of space. So yes, that black mound, that black substance, just like the black substance in our bodies, the melanin, is derived from the original black substance of space, and that's why it's called Ka, and Kayat is named directly after the original Ka and Kayat. Ka and Kayat means soul, divine consciousness, but it also means black, dark, night, and so forth. Okay. Okay, so once again, yet I say we thank everybody for joining in, and Yebesha Bio, we will meet again. That's it.